Elena's phone buzzed for the third time in 5 minutes. Her boss again. She quickened her pace through the marble lobby of the Grandview Hotel, her worn portfolio clutched against her chest. The meeting was supposed to start 10 minutes ago, and here she was, still trying to find the right conference room. 24 hours without sleep was catching up to her. Last night she'd been at the hospital with her sister, and this morning she'd pulled a double shift finishing blueprints for a client who kept changing his mind. Now her eyes burned with exhaustion, and the hotel's endless hallways all looked the same. She glanced at her phone again. The text from her boss read, 24th floor, hurry. That was all. No room number, no other details. Typical. She stepped into the elevator and pressed 24, running her fingers through her hair and trying to look presentable. This was supposed to be a simple client presentation. Get in, show the designs, get out. She could do this in her sleep. Actually, she practically was doing it in her sleep. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Elena stepped out into a quiet, carpeted hallway. Unlike the busy conference floor she'd expected, this corridor was dimly lit and almost silent. Soft music played from somewhere unseen. She looked left then right. Only a handful of doors lined the walls, each with brass numbers gleaming in the low light. Suite 2408 stood at the end of the hallway. That had to be it. Her boss said 24, and this was the only door she could see from the elevator. She checked her reflection in her phone screen one last time, tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear and knocked. No answer. She knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. Maybe they couldn't hear her over the music? Her phone buzzed again. Another message from her boss, this one just question marks. She couldn't keep everyone waiting any longer. The door was unlocked, so she turned the handle and stepped inside. The suite was nothing like a conference room. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, the late afternoon sun casting golden light across expensive furniture. A baby grand piano sat in one corner. The air smelled of sandalwood and something else she couldn't quite place. This was definitely not where she was supposed to be. I'm so sorry. I think I have the wrong, she started to say, backing toward the door. I've waited for you. The voice came from the shadows near the window, deep, quiet, and somehow both tired and relieved at the same time. Elena froze. A man stepped into the light and her breath caught in her throat. He was tall, probably in his early 30s, wearing a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Dark hair, sharp features, and eyes that seemed to look straight through her. But it wasn't his appearance that made her stomach flip. It was the way he was staring at her like she was someone important, someone he actually knew. I'm sorry, Elena said again, gripping her portfolio tighter. I'm looking for a conference room. I must have gotten the floor wrong or the room number. You're exactly where you need to be, the man interrupted. He took a step closer, and Elena noticed his hands were shaking slightly. I wasn't sure you'd come. I wasn't sure you'd even remember. This was getting weird. Really weird. Elena's heart started pounding. Was this some kind of mistake? Or worse, was this guy confused? Dangerous? She took a step back toward the door. I think you have me confused with someone else, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. I'm just an architect. I'm here for a client meeting and I obviously came to the wrong place. I'll just go. Elena Rivera, she froze again. He knew her name. How did he know her name? The man must have seen the panic on her face because he held up both hands. I'm not trying to scare you. My name is Alexander Chen. Chen Enterprises. I own this hotel, among other things. He gestured around the suite. And yes, I know who you are. I've been looking for you for a long time. Chen Enterprises. Even through her exhaustion and confusion, Elena recognized that name. Everyone in the city did. They owned half the downtown skyline. And this man, this Alexander Chen, was the CEO. She'd seen his picture in business magazines before, usually at some charity event or corporate function. He was practically royalty in this town. But that didn't explain why he was in this hotel suite or why he was looking at her like she was a ghost from his past. I don't understand, Elena said. We've never met. I've never worked for your company. I think you really do have me confused with someone else. Alexander reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen a few times, then held it out to her. 5 years ago. The spring charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum. Do you remember that night? Elena stepped closer, curiosity overcoming her fear. On his phone screen was a photograph, slightly blurry, clearly taken from a distance. It showed a younger version of herself in a borrowed dress, kneeling beside someone on the museum floor. The memory came back slowly, like something from a dream. There was an older woman, Elena said softly. She collapsed. Everyone was just standing around, staring. I was there with my firm, trying to network, but I couldn't just watch. I stayed with her until the ambulance came. That was my mother, Alexander said, his voice rough. He pulled the phone back and stared at the screen. She had a heart attack that night. The doctor said if someone hadn't stayed with her, kept her calm, she might not have made it long enough for help to arrive. Elena's hand went to her mouth. She remembered the woman's frightened eyes, how she'd held her hand and talked to her about anything and everything just to keep her conscious. She remembered the woman asking her name, squeezing her fingers so hard it hurt. But she'd never known what happened after the ambulance took her away. The gala had continued, and Elena had gone home and life had moved on. She made it through that night, Alexander continued. She lived another 6 months. Good months. Months where we got to say things we'd never said before. Months where I got to apologize for being such a terrible son, always putting work first. His jaw tightened. You gave us that time. You gave me that gift. Elena didn't know what to say. Her portfolio suddenly felt very heavy in her arms. After she died, I wanted to find you, to thank you. But I only had that one blurry photo and you'd left before I could get your name. I hired investigators, but they couldn't find anything. Then 3 weeks ago, one of them finally identified you, Elena Rivera, junior architect at Morrison & Associates, living on the east side, working 3 jobs to make ends meet, taking care of your sister. You've been investigating me? Elena's voice came out sharper than she intended. I needed to know who you were, Alexander said simply. I needed to say thank you. Before Elena could respond, her phone erupted with a call. Her boss's name flashed on the screen. She answered it without thinking. Where are you? Her boss shouted. The client presentation was supposed to start 20 minutes ago. Conference room C on the 2nd floor. The 2nd floor, Elena, not the 24th. Elena's face went hot. The 2nd floor. Her boss had written 2nd floor in the text, not 24. Her exhausted brain had misread it completely. I'll be right there, she managed to say, then ended the call. She looked at Alexander, who was watching her with an unreadable expression. I have to go. I'm sorry about your mother, truly. But this was all just a misunderstanding. A wrong room, a wrong floor, a tired brain. Nothing more. She turned toward the door, but his voice stopped her. Wait. She looked back. This wasn't a coincidence, Alexander said quietly. I had my assistant contact your firm yesterday about a new project. The Grandview Resort, North Coast. $200 million development. I requested you specifically as the lead architect. That's why your boss sent you here today, even though you're technically too junior for this kind of contract. But I wanted to tell you about it personally, to explain why I was choosing you. I owe you that much honesty. Elena stared at him. Her mind raced. This was insane. This whole situation was completely insane. She needed to leave, to think, to figure out what any of this meant. Your portfolio, Alexander said, gesturing to the leather case in her arms. You left it behind. At the gala 5 years ago. My mother had it when the ambulance came.
She must have been holding it for you.
I've kept it all this time. Elena looked down at her portfolio. It wasn't the same one. That old case had been lost years ago, and she'd never known where. I'm having your actual portfolio delivered to your apartment, Alexander continued, along with a formal proposal for the Grandview project. You don't have to answer now. You don't have to answer at all if you don't want to. But I'm hoping you'll at least consider it. The elevator chimed down the hall. Reality was calling her back. Elena took one last look at Alexander Chen, standing in his penthouse suite with sunset light falling across his face, looking at her like she held the answer to a question he'd been asking for 5 years. Then she turned and ran. Elena didn't sleep that night either. She sat on her apartment floor, staring at the leather portfolio that had been delivered at 7 in the morning by a courier in a suit. Her old portfolio, the one she thought she'd lost forever. She opened it slowly, almost afraid to look inside. Her old sketches were still there. The ones she'd drawn when she actually believed she could change the world with beautiful buildings, before medical bills and double shifts and reality had gotten in the way. Her fingers traced the edges of a drawing she'd made of a library, all glass and light designed to make people feel hope when they walked inside. Who was that girl? The one who drew these dreams? Next to the portfolio sat a thick envelope with the Chen Enterprises logo stamped in gold. She'd been staring at it for an hour, too nervous to open it. Whatever was inside could change everything, or destroy everything. She wasn't sure which scared her more. Her phone rang. Her boss, "Did you get it?" he asked, not even bothering with hello. "The proposal from Chen Enterprises?" "It just arrived," Elena said carefully. "And? What does it say?" "They wouldn't tell me any details, just that they wanted you specifically." "You, Elena, a junior architect who's been with us for 2 years. Do you know how insane that is?" "I'm reading it now," she lied, still staring at the sealed envelope. "Read faster." "If this is real, if they actually want to hire our firm for a $200 million project, this could save us. We've been bleeding clients for months. This could save all our jobs," he paused. "But Elena, if this is some kind of joke or if you've done something to upset them, I need to know now." "I haven't done anything," Elena said quietly. "I'll call you back after I read it." She ended the call before he could ask more questions. Her hand shook as she opened the envelope. Inside was a contract, professionally printed and bound. The cover page was simple. Grandview Resort Development Proposal, Lead Architect Elena Rivera. She flipped through the pages. The numbers made her dizzy. The budget, the timeline, the scope of the project. It was real. This was actually real. A resort on the North Coast, luxury suites overlooking the ocean, restaurants, spa facilities, conference centers, the kind of project architects dreamed about their entire careers. And at the bottom of the contract, a handwritten note on expensive paper. "I'm not asking you to forgive me for investigating you. I'm not asking you to forget how strange yesterday must have been. I'm only asking you to consider this project on its own merit. You're talented, Elena. More talented than you believe. Your firm will receive full payment whether you accept or decline. But I hope you'll say yes. Not for me. For yourself. For the architect who drew these beautiful dreams." There was no signature, but she knew who wrote it. Elena looked around her tiny apartment, the cracked ceiling, the radiator that barely worked, the stack of medical bills on her kitchen counter. Her sister's treatments weren't getting any cheaper. She'd been eating ramen for dinner 3 nights a week just to save money. Pride was expensive. Maybe too expensive. She picked up her phone and dialed the number printed on the contract. 3 days later, Elena stood in Alexander Chen's office on the 48th floor of the Chen Tower. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. She could see her apartment building from here, a tiny speck among thousands of others. "Thank you for coming," Alexander said. He stood behind his desk, and Elena noticed he looked tired. Like maybe he hadn't been sleeping either. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure I would either," Elena admitted. "But I need to understand something before we start. Why me? There are 100 architects in this city with more experience, better reputations, bigger portfolios. Why choose someone you barely know?" Alexander walked to the window, his hands in his pockets. For a long moment he didn't speak. Then he turned to face her. "After my mother died, I spent 2 years angry at the world, angry at myself mostly. I was at that gala because she wanted me to go, but I spent the whole night arguing with my father instead of staying by her side. We were fighting about the company, about expansion plans, about things that seem so stupid now." His voice cracked slightly. "I wasn't there when she collapsed. Some stranger was there. You were there." Elena wanted to say something, but she couldn't find the words. "My mother was a kind person," Alexander continued. "She spent her whole life trying to teach me that business isn't just about profit margins and quarterly reports. It's about people, about connection. About doing things that matter." He pulled something from his desk drawer, a photograph, old and worn at the edges. She kept this. The investigator found it in her belongings. He handed Elena the photo. It was from that night at the gala, clearer than the one on his phone. In the picture, Elena was holding his mother's hand, and the older woman was looking at her with such trust, such relief. Elena remembered that moment, remembered telling her about the library she wanted to build someday. Just to keep her talking, keep her conscious. "She told me about you before she died," Alexander said softly. "About the girl who held her hand and told her about buildings full of light. She made me promise I'd find you, made me promise I'd help you build something beautiful." He laughed, but it sounded sad. "It took me 5 years to keep that promise. I'm sorry it took so long. Elena's eyes burned with tears. She didn't want to cry. Not here, not in front of him. I don't need your pity, she said, her voice harder than she meant it to be. I don't need anyone's charity. This isn't charity, Alexander said firmly. Look at your designs, Elena. Really look at them. You have vision. You understand how buildings can make people feel something. That's rare. Most architects my company works with care about function and cost. Nothing else. But you draw buildings that make people want to live inside them. He picked up her old portfolio from his desk and opened it to a sketch of the library. This is what I want for the Grandview Resort. Not just another luxury hotel. Something that matters. Elena stared at the sketch. That stupid, hopeful, impossible library. I'm not that person anymore, she whispered. The one who drew that. I can't afford to be. Maybe you can't afford not to be, Alexander said. Your sister, she's sick, right? Medical bills are destroying you. You work 3 jobs just to keep up. I know because I looked into it and I won't apologize for that. But let me ask you something. If money wasn't a problem, if you could do anything with your life, what would you build? The question hit her like a punch to the stomach. When was the last time anyone had asked her what she wanted? When was the last time she'd even let herself think about it? Buildings that heal people, Elena heard herself say. Spaces that make you feel safe. Hospitals that don't feel like hospitals. Libraries full of light. Places where people can breathe. Alexander smiled. Really smiled for the first time since she'd met him. Then build them, he said simply. Start with this resort. Show me what you can do when someone actually trusts you. Elena wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him this was crazy, that she wasn't ready, that she'd probably fail. But looking at him, at the hope in his eyes, she realized something. He needed this as much as she did, maybe more. I have conditions, she said finally. Name them. I want full creative control. No interference from your board. No cutting corners to save money. No changing the design every 5 minutes because someone's wife doesn't like the curtains. Done. I want my firm to get fair payment for the work, not some inflated charity donation, already in the contract. And I want to know the truth, all of it. Why are you really doing this? It's not just about your mother's last wish, is it? Alexander's smile faded. He walked back to the window looking out at the city. 5 years ago I was drowning, he said quietly, in expectations and responsibility in my father's shadow. My mother was the only person who ever saw me as just a person, not a CEO in training. When she died, I forgot how to be human. I buried myself in work and deals and money. I became exactly what my father wanted me to be. He turned back to Elena. Then 3 weeks ago I saw your face in that photograph again. The girl who helped a stranger without asking for anything in return. Who held my mother's hand because it was the right thing to do. And I remembered that people like you still exist in the world. People who care about something other than profit. So I'm what, your moral compass? Elena asked. Your reminder to be a good person? No, Alexander said. You're someone who deserves a chance to build something beautiful. And maybe if I help you do that, I can remember why any of this matters. Why my mother wanted me to run this company in the first place. Not to make money, but to create things that improve people's lives. Elena looked at the contract in her hands, at the number that could pay off her sister's medical bills and finally let her breathe. At the title that said lead architect next to her name. She thought about the girl who drew libraries full of light. Maybe that girl wasn't dead. Maybe she was just sleeping, waiting for someone to believe in her again. Okay, Elena said, meeting Alexander's eyes. I'll do it. But I'm doing it for me, not for you. I'm doing it because I want to prove I can. That's exactly why you should do it, Alexander said. They shook hands across his desk. His grip was firm, warm, and something passed between them in that moment. Not romance, not yet. Something more fragile than that. A shared understanding. 2 people who'd both lost something important and were trying to find their way back. When do I start? Elena asked. Tomorrow. I've cleared my schedule for the next 2 weeks. We'll visit the site together, go over your initial concepts, meet with the engineering teams. You're coming with me? It's my project too, Alexander said. Besides, I have a feeling you're going to need someone to fight off the board when you propose something too expensive or too creative. Elena laughed despite herself. You really think I'm going to be that difficult? I'm counting on it, Alexander said, and for the first time, Elena saw him smile like he meant it. She left his office with the signed contract and a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. It might have been hope or terror, probably both. Behind her, Alexander watched her go, and for the first time since his mother died, he felt like maybe he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The construction site smelled like saltwater and possibility. Elena stood at the edge of the cliff, wind whipping her hair across her face, and for the first time in 5 years, she felt like she could actually breathe. Below them, waves crashed against rocks. Above them, seagulls circled in the afternoon sun. "This is it," Alexander said beside her. 60 acres of coastline. Nothing but wind and water and space. Elena pulled out her sketch pad, her fingers already moving across the paper. She could see it. Glass walls that brought the ocean inside. Open spaces that made you feel free. Gardens on every level so guests would wake up surrounded by life. Not just another hotel. Something that would make people remember what it felt like to be alive. "You're smiling," Alexander said, and there was something in his voice that made Elena look up. "I don't get to do this very often," she admitted. "Design something from nothing. Usually I'm just fixing other people's mistakes or working within impossible budgets. No budget restrictions here. Build what you see." For the next 3 hours they walked the property. Alexander asked questions, took notes, pointed out practical concerns about weather and foundation and access roads. But he never once told Elena what to design. He just listened. By the time the sun started setting, Elena had filled 20 pages with sketches. Her hand ached, but it was the good kind of pain. The kind that came from actually using your talents instead of burying them. "You love this," Alexander said as they walked back to the car. "It wasn't a question. Architecture. Yeah, it's the only thing I've ever been good at." "That's not true. You're good at caring about people. It's in every line you draw. These buildings aren't just structures to you. They're homes, sanctuaries, places where people can heal." Elena stopped walking. Nobody had ever described her work that way. Nobody had ever looked that closely. "How did you know that?" she asked quietly. Alexander turned to face her. They were standing close enough that she could see flecks of gold in his dark eyes. Close enough that she could hear him breathe. "Because I've been watching you work for 2 weeks," he said. "And everything you design for people. Not for profit. Not for show. For the person who's going to walk through that door and need something beautiful to remind them life is worth living." Something shifted in the air between them. Something dangerous and electric and completely inappropriate for a professional relationship. Elena took a step back. "We should go," she said. "I need to start the technical drawings." If Alexander was disappointed, he didn't show it. He just nodded and walked to the car. The drive back to the city was quiet. Elena stared out the window, trying to ignore the way her heart was still racing. This was a mistake. Getting close to Alexander Chen was a mistake. He was her client, her boss technically, and more than that, he was someone who lived in a completely different world. Penthouse suites and private elevators and charity galas. She ate ramen for dinner and took the bus to work. But when she glanced over at him, watching him drive with one hand on the wheel and sunset light catching his profile, she couldn't deny it anymore. She was starting to care about him. Not as a client, as a person. That night, Elena worked until 3 in the morning on the initial designs. When she finally fell asleep at her desk, she dreamed of buildings made of glass and light, and Alexander walking through them, looking for her. The next few weeks blurred together. Meetings with engineers, presentations to the board, late nights reviewing structural plans. Elena threw herself into the work with everything she had. It was easier than thinking about the way Alexander looked at her during meetings. The way his hand would brush against hers when they examined blueprints together. The way he'd started bringing her coffee in the morning. Always made exactly how she liked it. Even though she'd never told him. Her sister noticed the change during one of Elena's hospital visits. "You look different," Lily said from her bed. She was thin, too thin, but her eyes were still sharp. Almost happy. "I'm working on an amazing project," Elena said, adjusting her sister's pillows. "The kind I used to dream about." "That's not why you're smiling like that," Lily said. "There's a person." "I can tell. There's no person. There's just work. You're a terrible liar. You've always been a terrible liar." Lily grabbed her hand. "It's okay to be happy, you know. It's okay to want something for yourself instead of just taking care of everyone else." Elena blinked back tears. "I'm happy taking care of you. I know. But I'm not the only thing in your life anymore. And that's good. That's how it should be. Lily squeezed her fingers. Tell me about him, so Elena did. She told her about the hotel suite, the photograph, the promise to a dying mother. She told her about Alexander's sad smile and the way he looked at her like she was someone important. She told her about the construction site and the moment when everything felt possible. He sounds lonely, Lily said when Elena finished. What? This Alexander. He sounds like someone who has everything except what matters. Money, success, a company to run. But no one who sees him as just a person. Lily tilted her head. Kind of like you, actually. You've been so busy surviving that you forgot how to live. Elena wanted to argue, but the words died in her throat. Because Lily was right. They were both lonely in their own ways. Both hiding behind work and responsibility and fear. Don't mess this up, Lily said. Whatever it is you're building with him, don't let fear ruin it. But fear was exactly what Elena felt 3 days later when she walked into Alexander's office and found him arguing with an elegant woman in a designer suit. The woman turned when Elena entered, and her expression could have frozen fire. So this is her, the woman said, looking Elena up and down like she was inspecting something unpleasant. The little architect my father is so excited about. Victoria, Alexander said, his voice tight. We're in the middle of something. Can this wait? No, it can't wait. I just flew in from Paris because Daddy told me you're throwing away $200 million on some pet project with a nobody. Victoria turned back to Elena. No offense. Some offense taken, Elena said coldly. Victoria laughed. I like this one. She has a spine at least. She walked closer to Alexander, placing a hand on his arm in a way that was far too familiar. But seriously, darling, what are you doing? A resort project with an unknown architect? This isn't like you. You're smarter than this. Elena is extremely talented, Alexander said, removing Victoria's hand from his arm. The project is exactly what we need. What we need? We? Victoria's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. When did you start saying we about business decisions? You've never consulted anyone before. Elena felt something cold settling in her stomach. The way Victoria touched Alexander. The way she said darling like she owned him. The way Alexander didn't explain who she was. I should go, Elena said quietly. We can review the designs later. No, stay, Alexander said quickly. Victoria was just leaving. Actually, I'm staying for a few weeks. My father wants me to oversee some of our international acquisitions, and I thought it would be nice to spend time in the city again. Spend time with old friends. Victoria smiled at Alexander in a way that made Elena's chest hurt. We have so much to catch up on, don't we? Alexander's jaw tightened. Victoria and I used to be engaged, he said, looking at Elena. 3 years ago. It didn't work out. How formal, Victoria laughed. We were supposed to get married, merge our family companies, build an empire together. Then Alexander got cold feet and called it off 6 months before the wedding. Broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. She didn't look heartbroken. She looked amused. Elena felt like the floor was falling out from under her. Engaged. Alexander had been engaged to this perfect, polished woman who fit into his world like she was born there. And Elena was what? A temporary distraction? A project to make him feel better about his mother's death? I need to go, Elena said again, backing toward the door. I have a meeting with the structural engineer. Elena, wait. Alexander started. But Elena was already gone, walking fast down the hallway, trying to breathe through the tightness in her chest. She wasn't jealous. She had no right to be jealous. Alexander Chen wasn't hers. He was never going to be hers. He was just a client who happened to make her coffee the way she liked it. She made it to the elevator before the tears started. That night, she worked on the designs until her eyes burned. Every line she drew felt wrong. Every window she placed seemed to mock her. She was building a dream resort for a man who probably didn't see her as anything more than a charity case, a way to fulfill a promise to his dead mother. Her phone buzzed. Alexander calling. Again. She ignored it like she'd ignored the previous 7 calls. But then a text came through. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But Victoria doesn't mean anything to me. Not anymore. Not for a long time. Please let me explain. Not as your client. As someone who cares about you. Elena stared at the message. Someone who cares about you. What did that even mean? Care like a friend? Care like a mentor? Or care like something more? Something that could never work because they were from different worlds? She typed and deleted 5 different responses before finally writing, "I'm not angry. I'm realistic. This was always just business." "I shouldn't have forgotten that." His response came immediately. "It stopped being just business the moment you walked into that hotel suite." Elena's hands shook as she read the words. She wanted to believe them, wanted to believe that what she felt wasn't one-sided. But Victoria's amused smile kept flashing through her mind. Victoria, who belonged in Alexander's world, who understood charity galas and business mergers and how to touch his arm like she owned him. What did Elena have to offer? An apartment with a cracked ceiling and a portfolio full of dreams she couldn't afford to chase without his money? She turned off her phone without responding. The next morning, Elena arrived at the office early, hoping to avoid Alexander. Instead, she found Victoria sitting in her workspace, flipping through her design sketches. "These are actually quite good," Victoria said, not looking up. "I can see why Alexander is interested." "Those are private," Elena said, trying to keep her voice steady. Victoria finally looked at her. "Let me give you some advice, architect to architect. Actually, I'm not an architect, but I am someone who understands how this world works. Whatever you think is happening between you and Alexander, it's not real. He does this sometimes. Find someone who needs help and throws money at the problem. It makes him feel good about himself. Noble. Alexander isn't like that," Elena said, even though doubt was already creeping in. "Isn't he? He hired you for the biggest project of your career after one random act of kindness 5 years ago. He investigated your entire life. He's paying your firm more than market rate. He brings you coffee every morning." Victoria stood up, smoothing her perfect suit. "Those aren't the actions of a client. They're the actions of someone who's trying to save you. And trust me, honey, men like Alexander Chen get bored of saving people once they've fixed them." Elena felt sick. Elena spent the next week avoiding Alexander. It wasn't hard. She threw herself into meetings with contractors, spent hours at the construction site, and made sure she was always surrounded by other people when he was around. If he noticed, he didn't say anything, but she could feel his eyes on her during presentations, could sense his frustration in the careful way he chose his words. Victoria was everywhere. At the office, at client dinners, at the construction site, wearing heels that cost more than Elena's monthly rent. She had a way of touching Alexander's shoulder, laughing at his comments, finishing his sentences, like they were still connected by invisible threads from their past, and Alexander let her. That's what hurt the most. He didn't push her away or tell her to leave. He just accepted her presence like it was inevitable. The annual charity gala was on Friday, the same event where Elena had met Alexander's mother 5 years ago. Elena hadn't planned to attend. She had nothing appropriate to wear, and watching Alexander and Victoria together all evening sounded like torture. But her boss insisted. Chen Enterprises was their biggest client now. Appearances mattered. So Elena borrowed a simple black dress from a coworker, did her best with makeup she rarely wore, and showed up at the museum feeling like an imposter. The ballroom was exactly as she remembered. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, people in suits and gowns that cost more than her car. She grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and tried to blend into the background. Then she saw them. Alexander and Victoria, standing near the center of the room. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit. She wore a red dress that probably had a designer name Elena wouldn't recognize. They looked like they belonged together, like a photograph from a magazine about powerful couples who ran the world. Victoria was laughing at something, her hand resting on Alexander's chest. And he was smiling. Actually smiling in a way Elena hadn't seen in weeks. Something broke inside her chest. They look good together, don't they? Elena turned to find an older man beside her. Silver hair, expensive watch, the kind of confidence that came from old money. "I'm sorry," Elena said. "Alexander and Victoria." "My daughter." The man extended his hand. "Richard Ashford. You must be the architect everyone's been talking about." Elena shook his hand automatically. "Victoria's father, of course." "The resort project is quite ambitious," Richard continued, sipping his drink. "Though I'll admit I was surprised when Alexander chose such an inexperienced lead." "No offense intended." "None taken," Elena lied. "Victoria tells me you're quite talented. She's actually been reviewing your designs. We have interests in several hotel chains, you see. Always looking for fresh perspectives." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "She also mentioned that you and Alexander have become quite close during the project." Elena's stomach dropped. We have a professional relationship. Of course, of course. Though between you and me, I'm hoping this little distraction runs its course soon. Alexander and Victoria belong together. They always have. Just took my daughter a few years to mature, to be ready for the responsibility of merging our companies. Richard looked across the room at his daughter. She's ready now, and I think Alexander is finally ready to stop running from his future. Elena set down her champagne glass before she dropped it. If you'll excuse me. She walked toward the exit, her heels clicking too loudly on the marble floor. She needed air, needed space, needed to be anywhere but here, watching Alexander rebuild his life with a woman who actually fit into it. Elena. Alexander's voice stopped her at the door. She closed her eyes, took a breath, then turned around. Leaving already? He asked. He'd followed her away from the crowd, away from Victoria. I don't belong here, Elena said simply. I never did. That's not true, isn't it? Look around, Alexander. Everyone here speaks the same language, went to the same schools, knows the same people. I'm just the girl who held your mother's hand once. The project you took on to fulfill a promise. Her voice cracked. I'm not one of you. I don't want you to be one of us, Alexander said fiercely. That's the whole point. What is the point? Elena asked, and she was so tired of pretending. What am I doing here? What are we doing? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're getting back together with your ex-fiancé while I build you a dream resort and pretend my heart isn't breaking. Alexander stared at her. Your heart is breaking? Elena laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. Forget I said that. It's unprofessional. I'm unprofessional. I should go. No. Alexander grabbed her hand. Don't go. Don't run away. Not yet. Why? So you can explain how Victoria doesn't mean anything? How it's all just business between your families. I've heard it before, Alexander. I've watched you with her all week. You let her touch you. You smile at her jokes. You don't push her away. Because I don't want to hurt her, Alexander said quietly. She came back because her father is pressuring her. Because she thinks marrying me is her duty. I've been trying to let her down gently to make her see that what we had wasn't real. It was just two people playing roles our families wrote for us. And what are we? Elena whispered. What role am I playing? Alexander stepped closer. They were standing in the doorway, people passing by, but Elena couldn't focus on anything except his face. You're not playing a role, he said. You're the first real thing in my life in years. When I'm with you, I'm not the CEO, I'm not my father's son. I'm just a man who wants to build something beautiful with someone who actually sees him. Alexander. I know the timing is terrible. I know Victoria showing up makes everything complicated. But I'm not getting back together with her. I'm trying to end things properly with respect so she doesn't hate me, and her father doesn't destroy our companies out of spite. He took her other hand. But I should have told you that. I should have explained instead of avoiding you. Elena wanted to believe him. Wanted it so badly it scared her. Your life is here, she said, gesturing at the ballroom. Galas and mergers and people like Victoria who understand this world. My life is medical bills and ramen dinners and an apartment with a cracked ceiling. How is that supposed to work? I don't care about any of this, Alexander said. The galas, the appearances, the mergers. I care about building something that matters. And when I'm with you, when I watch you design spaces that heal people, I remember why I wanted to run this company in the first place. Not for money, for purpose. That's a lot of pressure to put on one person, Elena said softly. I'm not asking you to save me. I'm asking you to let me try, to give us a chance to see what this could be outside of work, outside of obligations. He squeezed her hands. I'm asking you to trust me. Before Elena could respond, Victoria's voice cut through the moment like glass. Alexander, darling, they're announcing the Foundation Awards. We should... Victoria stopped when she saw them holding hands. Her expression shifted from surprise to something colder. Oh, I'm interrupting. Yes, Alexander said, not looking away from Elena. You are. Victoria's laugh was sharp. How sweet. The CEO and his pet project. Should I come back later? Or should I just tell Daddy you're busy slumming? That's enough, Alexander said, finally turning to face her. His voice was ice. Elena is not a project. She's not a distraction. And you need to leave now. You can't be serious. After everything our families have invested, I'm completely serious. What we had ended 3 years ago, Victoria, it's not coming back. I've been trying to tell you gently, but clearly, you need to hear it plainly. I don't love you. I don't want to marry you. And I need you to stop pretending we have a future together. Victoria's face went white, then red. You're choosing her? Some nobody architect with a sick sister and student debt? Over me? I'm choosing myself, Alexander said quietly, for the first time in my life. And yes, I'm hoping Elena chooses to be part of that life. But that's her decision, not yours. Victoria looked between them, and for a moment Elena almost felt sorry for her. She looked hurt. Really hurt? But then her expression hardened into something uglier. You'll regret this, Victoria said. Both of you. My father won't let this insult slide. Chen Enterprises has contracts with half our subsidiary companies. We could bury you in legal battles. We could do whatever you want, Alexander said tiredly. I've been running this company scared of men like your father my whole life. Scared of making the wrong move, losing the wrong client, disappointing the wrong person. I'm done being scared. Victoria stared at him for another moment, then turned on her heel and walked away, her red dress flashing like a warning. Elena realized she was shaking. Alexander, what did you just do? If her father comes after your company, then we'll deal with it. Together. He cupped her face in his hands. I meant what I said. I'm done living for other people's expectations. My father's, Victoria's family, the board of directors. I want to live for something real. I'm scared, Elena admitted. I'm scared this is too good to be true. That I'm going to wake up and it'll all be gone. Then stay awake with me, Alexander said. Stay here. Let me take you to dinner. Let me prove that this isn't just business, that what I feel is real. Elena thought about Victoria's words, about Richard Ashford's confidence, about the very real possibility that dating Alexander Chen would make her life infinitely more complicated, more public, more terrifying. Then she thought about the way he looked at her designs, the way he brought her coffee, the way he saw her not as a charity case but as someone with something valuable to offer the world. Okay, she whispered. Take me to dinner. Alexander smiled, really smiled, and it transformed his whole face. He looked younger, happier, free. Thank you, he said. For what? For taking a chance on me, Elena laughed. I think you're the one taking a chance on me. Then we're both taking chances, Alexander said. That seems fair. He offered his arm and Elena took it. As they walked out of the museum together, leaving the gala and Victoria and expectations behind, Elena realized something. For the first time in 5 years, she wasn't just surviving. She was living. And it was terrifying and wonderful all at once. The lawsuit came 3 days later. Elena was at the construction site when her boss called, his voice shaking. Ashford Industries was suing Morrison and Associates for breach of contract, claiming conflicts of interest, misappropriation of design concepts, and a dozen other legal terms Elena barely understood. The amount they were asking for would bankrupt her firm 10 times over. This is because of me, Elena said, sitting down hard on a stack of lumber. Because of what happened at the gala. What happened at the gala? Her boss asked, his voice rising. What did you do, Elena? I didn't do anything. But Alexander rejected Victoria publicly, and now her father is destroying us because of it. The silence on the other end of the phone was worse than yelling. Fix this, her boss finally said. I don't care how, but if this firm goes under because you decided to date our biggest client, I will never forgive you. He hung up before Elena could respond. She sat there for a long time, watching construction workers move across the site, building the resort she'd designed, the resort that was supposed to change her life. Instead, it might destroy everything she'd worked for. Her phone buzzed. Alexander, I heard about the lawsuit. I'm handling it. My lawyers are already working on a response. Your lawyers can't fix this, Elena typed back. This is my fault. I need to make it right. Don't do anything stupid, please, let me help. But Elena was already walking to her car. She knew what she had to do, what she should have done from the beginning. The drive to Chen Enterprises felt like driving to her own execution. Elena rehearsed the words in her head over and over. By the time she reached Alexander's office, she almost believed she could actually say them without falling apart. Alexander stood up when she entered. Elena, thank God. I've been trying to reach you. My legal team thinks I'm quitting the project, Elena said. The words came out flat, rehearsed. I'm stepping down as lead architect. My firm will recommend someone else to take over. Someone without complications, Alexander stared at her. No, it's not up for discussion. The lawsuit goes away if I'm not involved. Victoria's father made that clear in his filing. He's not attacking your company. He's attacking mine because I'm in the way. So we fight him. We prove the lawsuit is baseless. And how long will that take? Months? Years? My firm doesn't have the resources for a legal battle like this. The other architects are going to lose their jobs because I was selfish enough to think I could have this. Elena's voice cracked. I was selfish enough to think I could have you. Alexander walked around his desk. You're not being selfish. You're being scared. Of course I'm scared. I'm terrified. But I'm also realistic. Look at what's happened in 3 days, Alexander. One rejected proposal, and Victoria's father is trying to destroy my career. What happens in 3 months? 3 years? How many times will I have to watch you get threatened because someone doesn't like that we're together? As many times as it takes, Alexander said simply. I don't care. Well, I care. I care that other people are going to suffer because of my choices. My boss, my coworkers, the firm that gave me a chance when nobody else would. Elena pulled a folder from her bag. I've already drafted my resignation. The project can continue without me. You'll barely notice I'm gone. That's not true, and you know it, Alexander said, his voice rough. This project exists because of you. Because of your vision, your talent, your heart. Then it'll be even better with someone who actually knows what they're doing. Someone who doesn't come with lawsuits and complications. Elena set the folder on his desk. I'm sorry. I really am. But this is the right thing to do. She turned to leave, but Alexander grabbed her hand. Do you remember what you told me? He asked. When I offered you this project, you said you were doing it for yourself. To prove you could. When did that change? When the cost became too high, Elena whispered. The cost of what? Of being happy? Of building something you love? Of letting someone care about you? Alexander pulled her closer. Or is this really about Victoria? About her father? About proving that you don't belong in my world? Elena tried to pull away, but he wouldn't let her. Maybe I don't belong, she said. Maybe everyone was right. This was always just a fantasy. Girl from the wrong side of the city dreams of something bigger and crashes back to reality. Stop it, Alexander said fiercely. Stop letting other people tell your story. You're the most talented architect I've ever met. You design buildings that make people feel hope. You care about every detail, every person who's going to walk through those doors. That's not fantasy. That's real. That's what matters. It doesn't matter if my firm gets destroyed in the process, Elena said, and tears were streaming down her face now. It doesn't matter if people lose their jobs because I fell in love with the wrong person. The words hung in the air between them. Elena realized what she'd said, what she'd admitted. You love me, Alexander said softly. That's not the point. That's the only point. He cupped her face in his hands, wiping away her tears with his thumbs. You love me, and I love you. Everything else is just noise. Noise that could destroy both our lives, Elena said. Then let it. I don't care. I spent 32 years doing the right thing, making the safe choice, living for other people's approval. And I was miserable, Elena. Completely miserable. Then you walked into that hotel suite, and for the first time in years, I felt something real. His voice broke. Don't ask me to go back to that life, please. Elena closed her eyes. She wanted so badly to believe they could make this work. That love was enough. But reality kept crashing through her hope like waves against rocks. What if it's not enough? She whispered. What if we try and it falls apart and we both end up destroyed? What if we try and it's everything? Alexander countered. What if this is the one real thing in both our lives and we throw it away because we're too scared to fight for it? Elena opened her eyes. You really want to fight Victoria's father? Risk your company? Risk everything? For you? Yes, without hesitation. That's insane. Probably, Alexander smiled. But you make me want to do insane things. Like hire an architect I met once 5 years ago for a $200 million project. Like tell Victoria Ashford to leave me alone at a charity gala in front of half the city. Like fall completely in love with someone who eats ramen for dinner and takes 3 buses to work and still somehow has more grace than anyone I've ever met. Elena laughed through her tears. I only take 2 buses. My mistake. Alexander kissed her forehead. Will you please stop trying to quit on us? At least until we've actually tried being together. The lawsuit will be handled. I'm countersuing for harassment and abuse of legal process. My lawyers are very good. Expensive but good. And I'm making calls to every client the Ashford family shares with us. Turns out, most of them think Richard is a bully who's been getting away with intimidation for too long. They're willing to make statements. Elena pulled back to look at him. You're serious? Completely. My mother once told me that you can't build anything good from fear. She was right. I've been running this company scared for years, making choices based on what wouldn't rock the boat. I'm done with that. It's time to build something that actually matters. And if we fail, then we fail together. But Elena, what if we don't fail? What if this is the start of something incredible? Elena thought about the resort taking shape on the coast, about the building she'd designed with light and hope and dreams she'd thought were impossible, about Alexander looking at her like she was the most important person in the world. Maybe she didn't have to choose between her dreams and her safety. Maybe for once she could choose both. Okay, she said finally. I won't quit. But I'm not doing this alone. If we're fighting the Ashford family, we're doing it together, as partners. Partners, Alexander agreed. In business and in life. That's incredibly cheesy. You love it. Unfortunately, Elena smiled. I really do. 6 months later, Elena stood on the completed resort terrace watching the sun set over the ocean. The lawsuit had been dismissed. The Ashford family had backed down after 3 major clients threatened to cut ties. Her firm was thriving, and the resort had just won an architectural award for innovative design. But none of that mattered as much as the man standing beside her. Nervous? Alexander asked. Terrified, Elena admitted. What if they hate it? They're going to love it. How could they not? You built a place where people can heal, where they can breathe, where they can remember that life is beautiful. He took her hand. You did exactly what you said you would. The doors opened and guests flooded onto the terrace. Their faces were exactly what Elena had hoped for. Wonder, joy, peace. They walked through her design like they were discovering something precious. You were right, Elena said softly, about everything, about taking chances, about fighting for something real. We were right, Alexander corrected. This is both of ours. The dreamer and the builder, the architect and the man who believed in her. That's even cheesier than before. I'm getting worse with age. I can live with that, Elena said, and kissed him as fireworks lit up the sky behind them. It wasn't a perfect ending. They still had challenges ahead, still had people who thought they didn't belong together, still had days when Elena doubted herself, and nights when Alexander woke up from dreams of his mother. But they had each other. And they had this beautiful thing they'd built together, not just a resort, but a life where dreams weren't fantasies, where love wasn't a weakness, where a girl who wandered into the wrong hotel suite found exactly where she belonged, in a room full of light, with a man who'd waited for her, with a future she'd designed with her own 2 hands, and that was more than enough. It was everything.